Every once in a while, a television character comes along who is so iconic, so specific, so familiar. It becomes hard to separate the actor from the role. You know the ones. 3 words, and you can tell instantly who I mean. Charming, nostalgic playboy.
What you call love was invented by guys like me to sell nylons.
White hat fixer.
You can't take Olivia Pope. Olivia Pope takes you.
And assistant regional manager.
Assistant to the regional manager.
Same thing.
No, it's not. It's lower, so it's close.
That's right. Everyone's favorite paper salesman / beet farmer, Dwight Schrute. The telltale glasses, yellow short sleeve button down, and the doofy hairstyle based on his portrayer's own haircut as a teenager. But the haircut is just about the only similarity between Dwight K. Schrute and Rainn Wilson.
People are literally walking down the street going, I love you. I love you. And you're on the front of magazines and you're winning awards and you're just that can really mess with your head because they don't really love Rainn Wilson. It's appreciation for my craft. So I have to transform that all the time. Like, I love you. You don't understand. We love you so much. No, you don't. You really don't. You really relate to this character, Dwight, and you appreciate my craft as an actor to transform into Dwight. But that's not love. It's something else.
Rainn Wilson spent a lot of his life in search of love. I've always admired that about him. His true nature as a seeker for artistry, spirituality, for gratitude. What he's found so far, and how it involves an atheist seeing the face of God. Today on the Gratitudeology podcast.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through the madness? Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right here waiting till you find me again.
Rainn Wilson, thank you so much for being here on the Gratitudeology podcast.
Thanks. Is it okay that I don't know how to pronounce the name of your, it's kind of a tongue twister.
It is a tongue twister, but it's
gratitudinal theology. I can't do it.
It's gratitude with an ology on the end. That's all.
Gratitudinal. I just missed.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You nailed it. For those of you who are new here, welcome. Gratitudeology, or as Rainn calls it, gratitude is the study and practice of positive psychology. It's what got me from my druggy days on the floors of New York City nightclubs to my current gig as a host on QVC. 2 states of being that couldn't be farther from each other. I realized that gratitude can take us from our darkest moments and bring us into the light. And Rainn is a shining example of this. And I was so excited when he agreed to sit down with me and take us through his story from the very beginning.
This is the time for the recognition that all people are one family, for the building of a united world.
That's a description of the Baha'is of the United States, of a core principle of their belief system. The prophetic figure, Baha'u'llah, brought teachings, they say, that represent an end to division and otherness. In Seattle, little Rainn was raised in the Baha'i faith. I know what you're doing. You're imagining tiny Dwight. Don't do it. Remember, this is Rainn's story. There are a few childhood photos of Rainn in his memoir, The Bassoon King. He looks like a pretty typical 60s or 70s kid, t-shirts, terry cloth tops, bowl cuts. And I have to say, even in the ones where he's smiling, they feel a bit strained.
I was raised in a very, what I would say, a beautiful and vital faith tradition. I was very lucky in that I had parents that tried their best to love me and fed me. We didn't have a lot of money, but I had a roof over my head and I got educated. So there was a lot that was working. But yeah, my mom took off when I was about 2 years old. My dad remarried right away. And so I was mostly raised by my stepmom. And I had a pretty kind of like emotionally absent dad. And then and they were in a very, very unhappy marriage. So like a lot of us, I just grew up in a household that kind of pretended to be happy on the outside, but was really dysfunctional and alienated in its reality.
It's an environment and a family dynamic that would have been difficult for any kid. The discord with the Baha'i teachings magnified it that much more.
That was especially jarring, was to be raised in a faith tradition that prizes love and unity and, cooperation and building bonds of friendship. And so as a Baha'i, I would go to meetings and we would be singing songs about love and unity and having discussions about love and unity and trying to do community work that built love and unity at the grassroots level. And then I would come home and my parents would barely talk. They didn't really hug. There was just not a lot of love in the room. And when you're 8, 9, 11, 13 years old, that can be incredibly disconcerting. So I would have much rather had a loving, vital, warm home life than a warm, loving, vital religious life and a kind of barren, disconnected home life. That'll mix you up.
And like so many mixed up kids, Rainn grew into a young adult interested in two things: art and New York City.
So basically, I got out of acting school, and at that juncture in my life, I didn't want anything to do with religion or faith or spirituality or morality, certainly not morality. I just wanted to be an artist living in New York City, doing the things that artists do in New York City.
Rainn hopped Manhattan's art meccas: Greenwich Village, the East Village, and finally, Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which was a very different place in the late 80s than it is now. A 1990s New York Times article with the headline, "Tomorrow's Stars Today in Brooklyn's Small Clubs," describes a Williamsburg venue which, quote, looks as if it had been built by high school students who pilfered their materials from junkyards and empty lots to make a clubhouse. To get in, you first have to find it in the maze under the Williamsburg Bridge, then walk down a skinny little alley with radiators, then plunge through the door, which is made of a loose sheet of reflecting plastic. End quote. The Times also called it, quote, pure bohemia. Yep, artists in the late 80s in New York City. Yeah, wait, we're missing something here, right? Yeah, you know it. Of course, there were drugs.
Can you tell me some stories about that time?
Well, I have a lot of salacious stories, some of which can be found in my book, The Bassoon King. Oh, look, here, I just happen to have a copy
What a coincidence.
Rainn tells his own stories from that time in his book way better than I can, and there are too many of them to even try. So I'll let him sum it up for you from the audio version of The Bassoon King.
I spent countless nights in drunken stumblings and almost vomiting in taxicabs, speeded speedily through parties and bars, wafted red-eyed and high through many late-night conversations, and woke up desolate, fried, embarrassed, and sad on countless mornings during those years. Good bohemian times.
The story is all too familiar for me. Going off in search of something. For Rainn, it was art. For me, it was raves. For both of us, good times. But really, at the end of the day, seeking connection, solace, thinking the drugs are it, and then realizing just how wrong you are.
I went through some periods of hardcore drug abuse. Hardcore, I wasn't passing out with a needle in my eyeball in the gutter, but I definitely used too much drugs. I one time woke up on Christmas morning and smoked what I thought was weed. It must have been laced with someone because I had this really bad panic attack, and that it was like heart palpitations, sweating. I came inches from calling 911 a number of different times. And in the course of that, I saw the face of God. So I actually saw the face of God on Christmas morning. And I swore to the face of God I wasn't going to do drugs again. So that was helpful. So that's when I just kind of turned to alcohol to medicate myself. And
what did she look like, God?
She looked a lot like a QVC host. What I saw in the face of God, and I knew it was the face of God, was like an abstract oil painting of this limitless horizon. And it was yellow and gold with streaks of green and blue. It was very abstract. It wasn't even like a face as much as it was like this incredible, abstract, gorgeous landscape. It reminded me of like a Mark Rothko painting. Later, I went to the Rothko Chapel in Houston, which is a really beautiful kind of church that was converted into an art gallery, a kind of a full immersion art gallery. And then I was like, oh, that's the closest I've seen to the face of God. So that kind of opened my mind to, and my heart to, a lot of different spiritual paths that I started investigating that, really helped get me out of this situation.
Suddenly, the atheist was asking questions about a higher being.
In the 90s, I didn't know what else to do. Therapy wasn't an option. I didn't have any money. There weren't really self-help books or apps or podcasts or YouTube series or anything like that. So I just started reading about the world's great religions, looking for some kind of path or some kind of answer. I kind of thought, well, perhaps having jettisoned my faith several years back, perhaps the way out is to look for some deeper meaning, frankly, because I was in pain. I was in anguish. I didn't know how to live a life. And I was headed down some very dark pathways. So the first question that I had to ask myself is, was there a God or not? And I think that's the most important question, because if there's no God, then we are kind of advanced monkeys that have consciousness, and life doesn't have any meaning beyond the meaning that you give to it. We're a random assortment of molecules and energy and atoms that have consciousness, and we're having this conversation right now. Or if there is a creator, well, then what does this creative force, cosmic kind of power want from us? How does it want us to behave? What kind of path does it want us to walk? What is that What does that journey look like?
Rainn was reading a lot. Buddhist texts, the Bhagavad Gita.
And I was reading a lot about Native American spirituality. And I stumbled on this idea from the Lakota Sioux of their name for God or a higher power, which is Wakantanka, which literally translates as the great mystery. And, I think we all struggle with God sometimes, and especially God being patriarchal. Like God is this man with a beard on a cloud, scowling and being really judgmental of us, like some kind of like mean daddy. In my book, Soul Boom, I call him Sky Daddy.
Yeah.
And how do we get away from God as Sky Daddy? And how do we get closer to a conception of God like Wakantanka, like the great mystery? Because to me, I could get behind something called the great mystery. So that started my path, and I read a lot of books and prayed and meditated. I went to a lot of different kinds of meetings. And ultimately, I did go back to the faith of my childhood, to the Baha'i faith. So in a weird way, now in my 50s, I look back and I'm really grateful for what I went through, because it forced me to dig deeper and to not just kind of live a superficial life of comforts, but to seek a deeper meaning and explore, kind of more mystical, metaphysical possibilities about what it is to be a human being. And this has fed a lot of my work as a writer and podcaster in the subsequent years.
I like to call this the gift of desperation.
Right. And it sparked everything that came after. That's the whole point of this podcast, by the way, is that we don't often change until we're in enough pain, but people might be sitting in that pain right now and being like, but when does it end, or when does something change? And what I want them to hear from some of their favorite people out there is there's a moment. And then if you flip the switch and you find gratitude, or you find a connection to your spirituality, that can fuel even greater success for everything after. They always say addiction's the only disease you come out better than when you went in.
Nice. That's so, amen, sister. I'm completely in alignment with what you're saying. And I often quote Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, which is a classic kind of workbook text for people exploring an artistic path. And you don't have to be an artist. Everyone is an artist. But she says, I come to spirituality not out of virtue, but out of necessity.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that. It's desperation and necessity forced me to start thinking about some deeper spiritual concepts, because I was grasping for any kind of, life vest.
Rainn had one other saving grace. The best drug of all, he says, is love. He married Holiday Reinhorn 50 miles from the volcanic ashes of Mount St. Helens in 1995. 10 years later,
what's always intrigued me so much, Rainn, is the duality of Dwight. Like we hate him, but we love to hate him, but we love him. He's obnoxious, but he's also noble. He's loyal. He's disciplined. And he's honestly like a lesson in spirituality. So I'm wondering how that hits for you.
I love that you're searching for a spiritual connection to Dwight. He's kind of the least spiritual human being I could know of, because everything for him is about kind of competition, getting ahead, kind of rules. He would only join a religion if it had a lot of really archaic rules, like some kind of really obscure, like Armenian Orthodox or something like that, where you ring a bell and light incense on the third moon or something like that.
Right.
Recently on the Soul Boom podcast, I was interviewing Whitney Cummings, and she said she loved Dwight so much because he cared about everything, whether it was the coffee maker or the right sandwich or his car or a sales meeting. He passionately cares. And I do think that there is something spiritual about the kind of vulnerability that comes with caring so much.
How did you bring your spirituality into every day? You know, what did you do that kind of kept you able to perform your best?
Well, I wouldn't say that I was very successful at bringing a spiritual practice into my work on The Office. I think that of necessity, the kind of loving collaboration that we undertook in making the TV show, the expression of creativity, joy, making each other laugh, improvising. I think that is a spiritual act in and of itself. I think just the making of art is a kind of prayer, and that is from the Baha'i faith, but I think that anyone can kind of relate to that. You're emulating the divine spark. But I struggled a lot during The Office. They say that the most stressful things in people's lives are listed like, number one, like death of someone close to you, divorce. But up near the top are, moving, having a kid, and believe it or not, coming into a lot of money.
Totally.
And so I came into a lot of money and a lot of fame. And I had my kid, who's now 19 and a half years old, or my wife and I did, and we moved all at the same time. And it was incredibly dysregulating as this kind of like broken, anxious, nerdy kid from the Seattle suburbs who just wanted to be loved, to come into that much fame that quickly. But, movie roles and ad campaigns and development deals, and it wasn't enough. And that was the odd spiritual test that I just wanted more. Like, why am I not getting more movies? Why am I not becoming a giant movie star? Why am I not making millions of more dollars? So I was greatly tested during those years. And it took me a while, till about halfway, 3/4 of the way through the Office experience, when I kind of like calmed down and got some really good therapy and some good recovery work to kind of pull me through. So I've learned a ton going through that. Being an unemployed, broke, desperate actor, as I spent a good part of my life, has its own challenges. And then coming into fame.
What you finally realize is fundamentally, it's an inside job. It just is.
Yeah.
So what I'm happy that my listeners will get to hear is that people might covet your position in this world. You've made it. You've done it. And the reality is the work is still yours to do. It's an inside job. So let's get to Soul Boom to bring it home, because that's the work that you continue to do and the work that you're paying forward. The concept came from getting rejected. Can you tell that story?
Sure. I've always been fascinated with God. So I had an idea for a television show that would basically follow me around, searching for God. And it was going to be a modern exploration of what God is or could be. How do we find God in the modern world? And it got rejected all across town, but a couple of places, including Netflix, I got the feedback that it was too controversial. And that's the kind of world Hollywood is, that you can have John Wick 4 and he shoots like 287 people in the face. But if you have a show like about God, that's too controversial. So we've got things a little bit backwards.
Then COVID hit, and Rainn saw an opportunity to explore these ideas. He called it Soul Boom.
And I posited it all under the rubric of why we need a spiritual revolution, because our modern world is kind of based around seeking comfort, seeking status, seeking kind of material gains, and doing this through competition and contest and one-upsmanship and backstabbing. And this happens in every field. It probably happens on QVC. It probably, it happens in education. It happens, in agriculture and in healthcare. Our systems are based on kind of the worst aspects of humanity, and we need to find a new way. So a lot of the book is about the internal spiritual journey, like you say, the inside job. But then a lot of it is like, okay, what do we do the inside job for? How do we take that work and leverage it to make the world a better place? We don't have to be celebrities or storytellers in order to do that. And we can all, in our own way, kind of leverage our spiritual journeys toward social transformation, even if it's on a very small level.
Or a big one. Take, for example, our planet.
Climate change is a great example. You can disbelieve in it all you want. You can think that it's a liberal, big government conspiracy. And that's fine. And as ocean levels rise and oceans acidify, fish die, and extreme weather events increase and take more lives, and our insurance premiums go up, the science and the reality of climate change is going to be there. And I think humanity is headed for rehab. I think humanity is in denial, just like we both were when we were younger and we were using drugs and alcohol. And you got to hit bottom. Humanity's got to hit bottom. It just depends on when. Like, do we hit bottom sooner or later? Do we need catastrophic events, like the Gulf Stream to stop working because the ocean warmth has prevented the Gulf Stream, and then everything turns upside down? Do we need something like that to happen, or can we work on it collectively? Humanity's taking this tremendous gamble of, hey, let's just continue to pump unlimited amounts of CO2 and methane into the atmosphere, even though the scientists are warning. Let's just see what happens, because I bet all those scientists are wrong. And that's a very addicty behavior, and we see it on a collective level.
Well, fingers crossed that we don't need to have the entire planet spontaneously combust before people start to get it.
This really is about toxic partisanship more than it is about anything having to do with science. Mm-hmm. There was a time in the 90s when both the political right and the political left knew of the dangers of climate change. Mm-hmm. George Bush was talking about it. The oil companies were talking about it. There was no dissension around it. But because everything becomes politicized, neither side learns from the other side, and it becomes a right and left kind of battle. And that's a spiritual disease right there. And our political system is so toxic that it has kind of created this situation around climate.
I'm pretty sure the only way to navigate these issues and questions day in and day out is with a gratitude practice. And sure enough,
that's a great question. I have a gratitude list with a bunch of buddies, and every morning we share 4 or 5 things that we're grateful for. Let me read some of my things from my text chain here. Grateful for being in shape and friends that make me laugh, for my son making music, for the advent of summer. And then the other day I wrote, grateful for a USTA match, my old friends, the Money Poncho Mexican restaurant, and my first real day off in months. And grateful for connections and surrender, for in-laws and aging gracefully, for talents and for Doc Martens. So it can be for things large and small. The other part is, Anne Lamott has a really beautiful book called Help, Thanks, Wow. And it's about the 3 kinds of prayers, which are help, thanks, and wow. So part of my prayer and meditation practice every morning is to just give thanks to the Creator and to the universe for all the things that are beautiful and good in my life, because we can so easily dwell on what's not working. I can spend all day thinking about the 2 or 3 things that are not going right in my career, and spend all day just cycling through them. When I'm healthy and I have a beautiful wife and we've been together for 30 years and my son is doing great after his first year of college, and and spring and summer are here, and there's hummingbirds in the trees, and I have a faith community, and the list goes on and on. So I get to make that choice. Gratitude, really, the expression of gratitude is a superpower.
Absolutely. And is that something that Walter has taken in?
You actually have brought that up, and it makes me think I need to do more work with him around that. He's naturally pretty grateful. He has a big heart and a good spirit, but I think that's something more specifically that we can teach him and speak to him about. But I love that you're encouraging that for parents and their children, because I think it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we do with my kids every morning. We have a gratitude practice. We have a little affirmation and gratitude practice with my 2 little boys. And a lot of my mom friends say, "Oh, my kids would never sit still." I said, "They would. They will. Just try it."
They will.
They
5 minutes. Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Rainn Wilson, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful spirit. You've had a fascinating path, and I'm grateful to have had your wisdom in your books, Soul Pancake, The Bassoon King, and Soul Boom, and also the podcast Soul Boom. I love what you said, that the expression of gratitude is a superpower. And I think we could all use a little more of that in our lives. That's all for today. Remember, if you like what you heard, if it impacted you in any way, and if you think it's a message other people in your life might like to hear, I'd be so grateful if you'd give me 5 stars, leave a quick little comment. Those things really help. And share this podcast with your friends, either on social media or just word of mouth. I'm on a mission for us all to help each other focus on expanding our attention towards what's good in the world rather than focusing on what's bad, one person at a time. If we all did that, even to our own little sphere of influence, the world has the potential to be a much more radically awesome place. Stick with me, friends. I've got your back. We're in this together, and it's a great day to see the greatness in the day. See you next time. The Gratitudology podcast is written, executive produced, and hosted by me, Jamie Hess. Sound design and studio production by Gotham Production Studios. Our theme song is Maze by Hills, sung by Nadia Ali. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Gratitudology.